Over the years of racing triathlons myself and working as a sports nutritionist, I've come across a lot of pre-race meals. And today we're going to break it down for you and build the perfect race day breakfast. By creating your own ideal breakfast, you'll reduce the risk of tummy upset and race to the best of your ability. So let's do it. If you're new here, then hey, my name is James and I'm a sports nutritionist and love to talk about all of these sorts of things. And a question I've been asked is breakfast actually necessary? So this seems a great place to start. And the answer is no. You don't need breakfast, but it is incredibly useful, and I would encourage people to have it if they can. To understand why, we need to understand how your body uses food for energy. There are three macronutrients: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And when it comes to racing, carbohydrates are the only thing that we care about. You only have about 90 minutes of hard, steady exercise before your carbohydrate stores get to such a low level that they essentially run out. And we call this bonking or hitting the wall. The food that you eat before your race has a big influence on your carb stores, and this includes carb loading and your race day breakfast. Of course, what you eat during a race is incredibly important too, but that and carb loading are topics I've covered in other videos, so do go check them out if you're interested. Now, you use up your carb stores even when you sleep, so come morning, those stores are down a little bit, and this is where breakfast comes in. We're essentially topping your carbohydrate stores up so that you go into your race with a full tank of energy and can race as well as possible. But we don't want to go crazy with breakfast. It's not meant to be huge and like you're cramming everything in, but instead be filling, make you feel good, but not over full. A massive breakfast is actually just going to increase the risk of tummy upset, but not really be better for performance compared to a smaller but satisfying brekkie. So, breakfast, we want it. How much of it we eat depends on how soon before your race you're eating it. This is the general advice when it comes to amounts of carbohydrates to eat before a race, but don't worry if you don't know how many carbs are in your breakfast. The key thing to understand here is that the further away from your race, the more you can and should eat. And the closer to your race, the less you might eat, and the more likely it is that you would be better off consuming liquid calories instead. So with this in mind, let's talk about what you should actually eat so we can build you the perfect breakfast. It's probably easier though to talk about what not to eat, because there are three nutrients which increase the risk of tummy upset. And so we want to carefully consider how much of those we have in our breakfast. Those nutrients are fiber, protein, and fat. And they're the big three that commonly cause problems. They're all harder and take longer to digest and more likely to contribute to things like diarrhea, stitches, cramps, or bloating during your race, because you won't have had time to digest and break them down properly, so they'll just be bouncing around in your tummy and your gut. And protein, fiber, and fat don't contribute meaningfully to energy during a race, so they're just not a priority. This isn't saying that you can't have these things at all. It's just highlighting that we should be more cautious and limit the amounts of these foods. So opting for things like low-fat options or instead non-dairy options might be a sensible choice, as well as avoiding things like nuts and seeds on race day. Okay, so now we know what to avoid. What do we want more of? Yeah, carbohydrates. That good old carby goodness. We want breakfast focused around carbs, which means things like rice, bread, pasta, cereal, or oats. Although I wouldn't usually suggest this, for race day we want wide varieties of these things, because that just reduces the fiber, protein, and fat content, which again is going to help our tummy to just absorb everything and make you feel better during your race. Now, quick side note on oats. For some people, oats might actually be too fibrous, so they might need to avoid them, but other people are absolutely fine. Essentially here, you can pick your carb of choice. Just think about what's realistic for you and what you're likely to want to eat early in the morning, especially if it's an early race start and you're a bit nervous. And what can you actually eat, for example, if you're traveling and not at home? All of these are great options for a race day breakfast. You'll notice that generally they're quite simple and straightforward, and that's exactly what we want. We don't want something that's exotic or a really big, rich meal. We want simple, plain, carby goodness. As I mentioned, you can still have some fat and protein in your meal. The main thing is to just make sure that you practice it repeatedly well in advance of your race. Try doing it early in the morning, followed by something like a run, because if you can tolerate it after running, then you're onto a winner. If not, then it might be worth changing things up. You might need to give yourself longer to digest it. You might need to eat less, or you might need to just try something completely different. It's all individual, and there are so many options that you can go for. So don't believe anyone who says that there is one food or one breakfast that you have to eat. Now, I know we've talked about creating the perfect race day breakfast for you, but hopefully what we've been through today gives you an understanding of what foods you can actually use to make your perfect race day breakfast rather than just a one-size-fits-all. As well as your breakfast being important, so is carb loading and what you eat during a race. So I've put some videos up on the screen where I go into this in more detail, and you should give them a watch. Hopefully this video has been useful for you, and if it has, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't already for more useful videos like this.